Hi everyone, welcome to Moments with Breadhead. So today it's really cold in the kitchen. I'm not taking off my jacket, it's that cold. So I have the oven on and that's not really giving much warmth. Usually that's a nice toasty bonus of winter nights, is when you turn on your oven and it heats up your room. But it is cold, so I have my jacket on. And before we start our easy soup that we'll make today, I just want to remind you that if you are cooking with bulky cloves, it's really important to keep your sleeves rolled up and keep any clothes or apron strings away from open flames, since I will be cooking on the stove. So let's get started. We have a lot of beautiful produce today and we're making a lazy man soup. We're not blending it. You can take any vegetables you have in your refrigerator, leftover, things that you buy at the market, and throw it into a pot and make soup. So today we're using some bouillon, and it's, you can use Maggi, you can use salt and pepper if you don't have bouillon. I basically just put 2 tablespoons into some water to mix it up, and I'll add more water later. We have green beans, broccoli, Mexican squash, and potatoes, and I'll be adding onions and garlic, which I've already chopped. So in this bowl we have a variety of all of the vegetables besides the potatoes. The potatoes we'll add to the soup first because they take longer to cook, and the rest of it you can just sort of add to the end, or once the potatoes are half cooked, and that will cook along with it and then it'll be done. So I've started with the onions chopped and the garlic. I'm just going to show you that for those of you who have never chopped a green bean, this is my easy way. I make a little stack and I get them all even at the ends, and then I take a knife and I'll just gently cut off the ends, and then I'll do the same thing on this side. Once that side's flat, it's easier to do. So they won't all be the same size, but hopefully, I went the wrong way. They won't all be the same size, but the ends will be lined up, and then you can just use the knife and chop them off. And then once that's done, I'll cut these into thirds. Get off of there. And that'll be good to go for the green beans. We will do the same, trash bowl, don't forget that. We'll do the same for the Mexican squash and a little bit for the broccoli. These have already been pre-washed, so I'll just take off the end and I'll make 2 rondelles or rounds, about 1/2 of an inch to 3/4 of an inch thick each one. I like really big pieces of vegetables in my soup, so if you don't like that, make smaller pieces along your tastes, and then just make sure that you're not cooking it as much, because this will take longer to cook than if you added smaller pieces. We'll do a little bit of broccoli. So if I just took off a few pieces of broccoli, I can just cut it down the center, just so it's not enormous, and when it's cooked, you're not putting like a massive thing in your mouth. So that's done. Now the only thing there is left to do is peel the potato. Technically with Yukon Golds, they don't really have a strong skin, so you could technically just add it in if you were feeling lazy. There's really nothing wrong with eating potato peels. I mean, there's a lot of recipes for baked potato peels alone with like cheese, but I guess you don't maybe want it floating in your soup on the top of it. That's not really appealing, and some people don't like the papery taste that it leaves in your mouth. So I'm peeling mine. And then I'll just cut it. So if you're going to cut potatoes and not use them right away, I would recommend placing them in a bowl of water, cold water, to sit. And that way you can leave potatoes cut for hours on the kitchen table. It might remove a little bit of the starch, but it won't dry your potatoes out, because potatoes will become really starchy and gross if you just cut them and leave them out on the counter. So that said, I'm going to use mine right away pretty much, so we don't have to do that. I'm just going to cut it down the center, and then I'll put them on their flat side and cut them again. I am not worrying about making beautiful cubes. If you wanted to make a beautiful cube, you could technically trim this and trim off the sides and just keep trimming it until it was basically like a perfect rectangle, perfect, whatever. And then, you know, you could chop it and then all of your pieces would be the same. I really don't care about that, and you do you. I'm just making a simple soup, so I will keep that piece, and I'll chop up these pieces as well. And then with these guys, yeah, I already chopped that up. I'm just going to make some dices around the same size. It's about an inch dice. So some of them will be smaller and some of them will be bigger because one is an end and one's in the middle, but it doesn't matter. And then I'll just put these in a bowl. And we're gonna add these first as soon as we cook the onions and the garlic a little bit. So we'll just set these aside as is. All right, so let's move over to the stove. We basically have everything we need right now. Super simple. This doesn't have to be fancy, and let's get cooking. Hi everyone, we're back. We are going to get cooking on our soup. We have our roughly chopped onions and we have our roughly chopped garlic. I'm going to add a little bit of oil. Usually I'm a big fan of cooking with salt as you go, but today I'm going to add a little more oil. But today, because the bouillon is really salty, I'm actually not adding any salt to the recipe, and since I'm adding the bouillon rather quickly in this recipe, that will flavor the vegetables enough. I think it'll be pretty salty as it is. So just adding the onions, and I can add the garlic in at the same time for this recipe. And I'll just stir it around a little bit. And you don't need to cook it too much. You just want to release the flavor and make it a little fuller. And you want to cook it a little bit just to make your soup a little more flavorful. Either way, they're going to get soft and, like, you know, be a part of the soup anyway. But you're just stirring it up a little, making sure it doesn't burn. And then as soon as this is sweat and starts to release the flavor, I'm going to add the potatoes and I'll add the bouillon, and we'll bring that to a boil, simmer, and we'll add the rest of the vegetables in, and that's it. And then, you know, once the potatoes are almost cooked, we'll add the vegetables. And then once they're cooked, it's done. It's a vegetarian soup. You don't need to worry about it cooking for a certain amount of time. When it's soft, it's edible. Okay, so I'm adding the potatoes. And I'll just cook these up a little bit, and then I'll add the stock. And then I have just a whole bunch of water. And I think this is a lot of vegetables. I didn't measure this. I think it was about 6 cups of water. And because we're not blending this up, there's really no need to regulate the liquid. The last soup we made, we blended using an emulsifier, and when you put in your water, you need to be really careful to not over liquefy, because then you end up with hot liquid tea, vegetable tea or something. You don't want that. So, but with this, since it's just vegetables and broth, you can add as much or as little, add more salt. You can always add more water if you over salt. So there's a lot more flexibility in the recipe. So we'll just let this come to a boil, and we'll let this cook. When the potatoes are almost done, I would say you could stick a fork in it, but it's still hard to remove the fork. I'll add the vegetables, and that'll be it. We'll be back in a minute. Okay, we're back. So this started to boil. We don't need it to boil. I've turned down the temperature, and now it's really a simmer. The potatoes have been cooking for about 5 minutes, and the onions are really slippery. So it's pretty hard to get my finger, don't put your fingers in the soup. It's pretty hard to get my fork through this. So you could wait a little bit, but since some of these pieces are smaller and easier, I don't want the potatoes to get so cooked before I put the vegetables in that they turn into mashed potatoes. So I'm just going to add these vegetables all in. When you're adding something like this to boiling anything, first of all, you want to add the food away from your face. You don't want to just do that, if that would even be comfortable, because you want to avoid obviously things splashing in your face and burning your eyes out. So just be careful, use caution. You can do this bit by bit with your hands if you're more comfortable. Just don't do it directly towards your face. And once we get all these in, we'll just mix it up a little bit. We'll turn up the heat a tiny bit just to get it simmering again. And we'll come back in about 6 minutes and our soup will be done. So it's been about 5 minutes. The potatoes are just cooked enough. When I turn this off, you know, my knife goes through the potato pretty easily, and of course, because it's hot, it'll continue to cook. The vegetables are to my liking. They're soft, but they're also still they have like a little bit of crunch to them. I wouldn't say crunch, but they're not falling apart. This will get softer as it sits here on the stove, but as is, this was a 15-minute soup, all said and done, super easy. You can put any vegetable you want in here. Really, the sky's the limit. So we're going to bring it over and we'll plate it, and you'll have quick and easy vegetable soup. All right, everyone, we're back. We have ready vegetable soup, ready to serve it up and put in your belly. On a cold day, I really can't think of anything better besides maybe a grilled cheese to go with it. So here we go, from our kitchen to you. We hope you enjoyed this moment with Breadhead, and we'll see you soon.